Yeah. So thanks for having me. So yeah, I'm
Sure.
Dr. Jane Harrington, and I knew I wanted to be a professor when I was 16 years old, which is pretty,
Um,
pretty
yeah.
uh, unusual. I just
Mhm.
had a passion and very much in the sciences. Got my degree in microbiology and went on to get my PhD in microbiology. So molecular was my foundation. I got very
Mhm.
much into medical and to host pathogen immunology whenever I was a postdoc at UCSD. But my
Mhm.
foundation as a scientist was a learning path, being an
Mhm.
educator. So that's something that my identity and will always be my identity is I am an educator. I am
Yeah.
a learner-centered educator, and that tell my
Mhm.
students, I will do anything to help you learn. And that has been a
Oh.
drive for me, learning how to teach, learning the science of learning. That's
Mhm.
been a long time career path. I'm family, so I have a
Yeah.
daughter. She's now 15, and whenever I was at University of California, San Diego,
Mhm.
and the lifestyle of a high tier professor, so the R1 institutions, was where I got my training. It
Yeah.
was
For
not
sure.
conducive to family being there for your family. I
Yeah.
was working 8 hours, commuting 2 hours with a 1 year old, and
Jeez.
it was hard.
Yeah.
And so
Okay.
we took the leap when she was 3. We went to the Caribbean. So for 12
Wow.
years, I was teaching at Caribbean medical schools, and I loved
Mhm.
it. It was wonderful. It was much more healthy balance, and I was about midway. I was really curious. I was really passionate about technology, digital
Mhm.
media, and how we can use and integrate digital media for better teaching. And so,
Yeah.
me
Absolutely.
just standing didactic, me telling you vocabulary, and then having a multiple choice question, absolutely, and learning about different backgrounds, especially English second language. At one point, about
Yeah.
80% of our student population was from Puerto Rico, and the
Oh.
language challenges for especially immunology, which is very contextual. They
Mhm.
understood the concepts, but to be able to articulate it or to answer a multiple choice question was a barrier. Absolutely
Okay.
neurodiverse. I
Yeah.
disclose now that I'm neurodiverse. I have dyspraxia,
Yeah.
so I have altered proprioception, and I have dysgraphia. So whenever words come out of my mouth, when numbers
Yeah.
come out, when I write things down, they flip. So that's why I joke I'm a PhD, not an MD, because if I mess up in the lab, I throw away my bacteria and I start again the next day. Versus if I made the mistake in clinical practice, I would kill
Oh yeah.
somebody the second day because I flip numbers. So
Yeah.
that
Okay.
perspective of really being a champion of what
Mhm.
can I do to meet the needs of my learners. I've taught about 7,000 now physicians.
Wow.
And so I've had diverse experience. And of course, the pandemic hit. The pandemic hit, it changed everything. I mean,
Yeah.
all of us
Absolutely.
have a really, I would say, a real evaluation about what our values are. And that
Mhm.
became a real catalyst for our system, the Men Micromaps. I was
Mhm.
teaching respiratory infections in fall of 2020. I had
Yeah.
about 1,000 students across the globe, and I'm teaching to my Zoom dot. Um, and
Yeah.
I mean, just passionately, I had to teach them about the coronavirus, about SARS-CoV-2, about COVID, because there was so much misinformation. And it's like
Yeah.
we needed
Absolutely.
that information. A lot of students were volunteering in hospitals. So I had 7 hours, so 7 1 hour lectures, and I had 42 microbes that you have to cover, respiratory tract. It's a lot. And I'm like, how
Yeah.
can I literally make time? I needed time, and I contacted the pathologist, the clinician, the pharmacologist. And
Yeah.
I said, "Are you teaching this? Let's do a case study." And their response was, "It's not on the test. It
Oh.
wasn't in our exam bank. It wasn't on on the board exam." And I just that I said that's not. That's not my major goal. My major goal is to teach students about
Yeah.
science. So being that I have dyspraxia, I have a very elaborate three-dimensional compartmental, like a filing system, or almost thinking like going to a library in different floors and different sections. And so the microbes belong in different spaces, and I was doing that intuitively. And so I printed the microbes out. I printed them on pieces of paper, and in my living
Mhm.
room, I had a big living room. This is on the island. I
Yeah.
moved them around to correspond to how I had them compartmentalized in my brain. And that was the start of the MedMicroMaps learning system. It is actually, it's color coding, it's a mind map, it's method of loci. So I got a lot into the
Mm,
literature of the science of memory. And if you have, just think of like a clock, or we also have coordinates, north and south, east and
mhm,
west. And so if you position things up in the northwest corner, our viruses are small, they're fast. Those are the sort of the top ones. That's going to have an actual corresponding section of your brain, it's actually flip side, that is going to store that memory. Versus parasites, they're large, they're slow, they're going to be an onset
mhm,
is like after 30 days, and they're down in a southeast corner. And I was doing that intuitively, but I now developed a PowerPoint system working with a graphic designer, and
mhm,
it is interactive. It starts out with a presentation, and is it fast or is it slow? And it's again that's going from west to east. And and it's also interactive. For e-learning, you have to have a physical engagement. I'm using my hands a lot. You have to have the physical act of touching something, be it a mouse, but it's better for a
mhm.
touchpad. Because whenever you engage your hands, if you're writing, if you're pointing, if you're touching, it actually, the neuromuscular connection actually routes the full memory to develop. And so this is now learning strategies. So the whole Med Micromap system, it's been published. We've won
Yeah.
awards from this.
Oh,
It's 115 pages, PowerPoint pages, eight
dang.
fonts to six fonts, and it's all of the
Jesus.
infectious diseases. So we launched this, and I say we, I'm working with my
Yeah.
husband. I
Yeah, I
launched
was gonna,
this, yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, go ahead. Yeah, I was gonna say, I was gonna maybe pause for a bit just because I think it would help too, just to have a little bit better understanding micromaps in terms of like at least when I'm looking at the website, like
Yeah.
there's a lot of different terms that are being used. There's like XR, AR, VR.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah,
I'll pause. I'll just wrapping up about the foundation of the learning system. It was on a website. It was with
yeah,
the institution I was at, and it was divided by its system. So respiratory,
mm,
nerve system. And when I launched it, I had three cohorts of students. So this is now published for the PowerPoint system. So that's what I make
mm.
the distinction about where we are now with XR. And I had
Okay.
1,000 views per module per month over 14 months. So we got over 16,000 views. So the students were using it, and they were
Yeah.
consistently, the studies that were done, I mean, it was just overwhelming. And constantly I got the feedback of, oh, I'm a visual learner. I'm a visual learner. I'm a visual learner. So
Yeah.
that's just, I want to have our foundation. The transition to what
Mm,
we are now building an immersive metaverse,
okay.
that's where we left academia. So I'll pause about, I was in academia, and
Mhm.
the system of academia, of like PowerPoint, text-based, multiple choice
Yeah.
questions, that is the status of medical school, nursing school, all these health sciences. And I was frustrated
Mm.
because the
Yeah.
adoption of something new, e-learning, it was very resistant. So I just going to pause that. The PowerPoint, I will offer that to anybody. It's published, but now creating it into an immersive, virtual reality, extended reality,
Okay.
augmented reality. That's where I was like, I need tools, I need money.
Okay.
The SBIR. I really need to now jump into this frontier technology world so that I can create a new learning experience
Mm.
with technology.
Yeah, and I think my question too is just like when XR versus AR, just in terms of like definitions, like are
Mhm.
they kind of more of a synonym, or is there something that's a little bit different about XR than AR?
It's very different. It's very
Okay.
different. So that's what it's really we think of like Pokemon Go is the really major
Yes,
augmented reality. So if you
absolutely. Yeah.
have your phone, so whenever we talk about augmented reality, you are in the world. So I would just say 90% of your intake is real, and you have your phone up and you can project. And so that's where my reality is augmented. So it's kind of think of it as
Mm.
supplemental. So we're going to have an app coming out on the iPhone. And so we're going to have an app coming out in March that's augmented reality, and we're going to have augmented reality cards. And so you scan
Yeah.
it, and then the microbes they look, it's magic. They
Yeah.
look like in your world that are, it's on your phone, your tablet,
Mm-hmm.
and we're going to have an AI tutor. So it's actually me, Dr. Jane, but it's
Nice.
trained on my material. And so you will have your tutor and in your phone or tablet, and usually it's
Mm-hmm.
going to be mobile devices. You can talk to it, interact with it, and whenever you're
Mm-hmm.
looking in that screen, the world is augmented. So that's what I would to start out
Oh.
with. Pokemon Go is the
No,
best
that's
analogy. Yeah.
yeah, no, it's a good analogy. Huh.
When you get into virtual reality, I just want to grab
Yeah, I was gonna say
my
like
headset.
a headset. Yeah.
Yeah. So these are the head-mounted devices.
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely I've tried, I've tried different ones. This is now I think our sixth one. I've been in headsets for 5 years. So a
Mm-hmm.
virtual reality, you put on the headset and it is all of your intake is digital. It's
Mm-hmm.
in our storyline, it's a sore throat. So it's Magic School Bus, strep throat. So if you watch the Ralphie Gets Sick, so you have to solve that it's strep throat, but you now are shrinking down to nanometer size. And so first
Mm-hmm.
person, you have a view and the entire world is the body. So you're actually in the crypt of the palatine tonsil and you have to battle. You have to battle the microbes, you have to work with the immune system. So that's what we say virtual reality. What we're working for, and it's really they Google just announced the Android XR. That's what we call the mixed reality, and that is where
Mm-hmm.
especially glasses, like
Yeah.
Meta has the Ray-Bans. I we are our field. We are
Mm-hmm.
predicting that glasses are going to be much more utilized. I'm
Yeah.
actually hopefully Santa's going to bring me the Ray-Bans this year. That's where you have the glasses all of the time. And so you're taking in, mostly you're taking in the real world, but you're able to interact with the metaverse. And so the metaverse is
Okay.
it's like Minecraft. And that's what we're
Yeah.
building a metaverse. We're
Yeah.
building that you can access it from VR headsets, glasses, phones, computers, in rooms. So
Mm.
that's what we're moving towards. Does that clarify about the vocabulary?
Yeah, and I guess like the tech is advanced because I thought like Google Lens like it was around for a little bit and then not or was it Google Lens or it was like Google
Hmm.
Glasses for a bit. Like I felt like they were a
Hmm.
thing for a moment and then they just
Hmm.
fizzled out, but I guess the tech is advanced.
Yeah, think of the major like the major releases they have hurdles. And so whenever
Mm,
we had the Google Glasses, I mean they were one of the first ones and it was a hurdle. But now we have multiple companies that are doing that, technology.
yeah.
They've gotten better, they've gotten smarter, they've gotten more comfortable, longer battery life, a lot of it's
Mm,
practicality. So sometimes there is the HoloLens. That's another one. That I believe that's a Microsoft product. And that was like huge in the medical education. But what
mm,
happens is another company, Meta
yeah.
or Apple, they come up, they say, like, let's take that technology and let's make it better. And it's a race, and we get
Yeah.
excited when something new comes out. We're like, Apple, I can't get the Apple Vision Pro because it's $3,500. My
Yeah.
grant won't cover that. But we know that technology there's going to be another one that comes out. So Apple's going to come out with another one that's going to be at a cheaper price point. The
Yeah.
the Meta Quest is fantastic. This
Yeah.
Christmas time, it's the 3S is 299. So yes, there are products that come and go and fade. I got the Quest Rift. That was in 2019. It was obsolete in 6 months because the cord was broken.
Yeah.
And it's
But
it's the nature of the beast. Yeah.
yeah. And I do want to pivot just slightly because I know we've talked about a little bit more
Yeah.
about like your reasons for med micromaps, a little bit more about like
Mhm.
what it does. But I do want to talk about maybe the business side, maybe more
Yes.
like for application for like PhDs who want to do a startup. So what are some of those challenges that you face
Yes.
as like a
I
founder of a startup? Yeah.
the leap of leaving academia
Hmm.
was that was it had to happen because
Hmm.
I applied. I took 2 years to research for the National Science Foundation. It's the SBIR, Small Business Innovative Research. I took 2 years to
Yeah.
research and to network and develop teams. And I work closely with Lindenwood University. They're our collaborator. I have three
Mm.
the students who are working on a project. And so I had to step out of my microbiology little world and
Yeah.
really LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I had when I reached out to anybody who would give me time. And it was
Yeah.
especially
Fantastic.
new entrepreneurs, women. That something was very inspiring for me because
Mm.
what is it? The number is 2% of VC goes to women-owned businesses,
Yeah.
which is a
That's
really horrific number.
absolutely, yeah.
So I was still working as a professor. I actually came back to the United States for my daughter's high school.
Yeah.
And I was planning, I mean, I'm like, I'm a professor. I'm a professor. I love the stability. I love the students. And
Mm.
for the SBIR grant for being a PI, you have to dedicate 80% of the time. So I had to leave academia. I
Mm.
had to
Yeah.
not be a full-time professor. And that was sad. It was like, who am I if I'm not a professor?
Yeah.
Well, I'm still me. I'm still an educator, but now I'm a CEO. I was terrified.
Mhm.
But being career change is I was so hungry for knowledge.
Yeah.
I wanted to learn. So networking. We
Mhm.
connected with our local economic development. It's the Apex group, and they helped with the grant writing.
Yeah.
We're wrapping up ICOR, the National Science Foundation ICOR, and I started
Yeah.
learning about business, and that became I
Mhm.
actually my foundation as a scientist has translated really well to the skills of being a chief executive officer because I think of it as a puzzle or a game or a logistic
I
or
see that.
like I have hypotheses that I think something would work, but I
Mhm.
gather data and I have conclusions and I debate and I have that malleable interpretation about conclusions. And I
Mhm.
think that that's really important. Scientists have that, I'm saying educators, we're very adaptable. And so it actually does really well. I find that my
Mhm.
experiences, now I love it. Now I love being
Yeah,
the
no, I could
CEO.
tell.
Yeah, I'm very organized. So we have, my husband and I are full time, and we have seven people on our team who are
Oh.
part time, who are predominantly XR designers. But
Mhm.
reaching out to scientists, I just had a meeting with the National Institute of Health, the 3D models. We are working with actually 10 different universities for doing the educational research on our beta. So that's what networking, researching, taking classes. This Christmas break, I'm taking the Microsoft Azure course, so it's a 9 hour course, but it's free. Like it's
Yeah, no, that's
um,
great. You're still learning. Like that's yeah, and I then think sorry, like I
yeah.
believe that really kind of speaks to like a lot of PhDs and like that there's just something that really like guides and pushes them to continue to do something different. Like even if it is different, it has those like those strings of those things that really remind them of academia. But I do know like it seems like when I talk to a lot of PhDs, usually when they leave academia, usually it's because they're like upset with the current conditions or there's some other like element at play. But it seems like from your experience, it wasn't out of leaving wasn't because of spite. It was just or out of some negative feeling. It's more like you were pursuing something that you believe was better, and it does seem like it is better overall, though. Or unless there's something else that we didn't address, but
I being a woman who is I'm queer identifying, I'm bisexual, I've been an advocate, neurodivergent, an opinionated, and an
yeah,
innovator. I have encountered challenges that were unsustainable. I got infected with chikungunya virus in 2014. My husband, daughter, and I. This was in St. Kitts, and I have arthritis. My knuckles. I cannot do science. I can't hold a pipette. And so there were definitely a lot of bigger the hour demands I and so those were some personal reasons that I was like this is unsustainable, that I can't work those hours. I can't have those demands. And they
mhm,
certainly universities, the faculty, and especially the shift with the pandemic, like the students changed, their learning styles changed. but the faculty were like, we're not getting the support that we need. So I don't want to sugarcoat that my
Oh, that's good to know.
was pleasant. I do want to make a comment for
Mm,
anyone for the transition
mm,
is that if I so we had to do 100 interviews. So I've done we've done 110 interviews in 7 weeks.
wow.
For me to cold call reach out when I was a faculty, the course director for
Mm,
microbiology, immunology, infectious disease, associate professor with my credentials, the .edu address, I almost always got responses. The
yeah.
department chairs, like vice presidents. When I shifted to now I'm an entrepreneur with a startup and I did cold call with my work email. I mean,
Yeah.
when I was in the Dallas Fort Worth area, I mean, I got
Nice.
zero
Oh,
responses. There is major judgment for academics,
mm,
for startups, or, for people who are in industry. And I mean, it was like it was shocking. I was like,
yeah.
don't you know who I am? Seriously. But I've gotten comments even like in
Yeah.
particularly the high tier universities are like, oh, you're not from Yale, you're not from Stanford, I can't talk to you. And that
Jeez.
kind of like that white
Yeah.
pillar is something that I'm just, we're
Yeah.
disrupting. We want to teach people about microbes because it's I don't believe in that. So
Mhm.
one advice I would like to share
Yeah.
is
That's my
that
question.
I started using my personal email, Jane Harrington one, not my work email, not identifying that I was a startup company. And I would say
Mm,
I'm a National Science Foundation. I would like to discuss collaborations, and that changed my responses. And so
mhm.
whenever I'm an academic, I do an academic research. It will never go away. So even though I'm a startup, I have that mentality. So collaborating on the research that has now gotten me the connections onto the universities. And so I want to give that advice that I didn't realize about how much of a bias there would
Yeah.
be for being an entrepreneur and nobody wants to talk to you in academia. We're going to say like, oh no, we are doing a novel education learning experience. We want to
Mm,
collaborate for doing the studies. So we're actually going to be we're hopping on the road. We got an RV and we're going to go to multiple campuses in the springtime. And we're going to be doing
uh,
studies on learning styles with our app.
yeah, no, that's great to hear. And in a little bit about, I guess, startup culture and kind of the business side, like do you currently have like a mentor, like a business mentor? And are there any like resources that you found helpful, maybe any books, or is it just completely just experience that is
Yes.
important?
The National Science Foundation I-Corps is a program. They have regional hubs. It's competitive to get
Mhm.
into. You get grant
Yeah.
funded. We got automatically accepted because we're SBI awardees. But in that, I started looking. I felt very uncomfortable starting the program of not knowing the language. It's a
Yeah.
whole new field. So Steve Blank is a genius whenever it comes to startups, and
Mm,
Udacity is the website, and he has a how to
mhm,
build a startup. I mean, I have the book which is promoted. I mean, it's the foundation for the I-Corps program, and I
mm,
took the course myself. It's free, and I think it was around 6 hours, 6 to 8 hours, and taking that. I had to learn from a professor. I had to learn from an
mm.
academic because he put it
Yeah.
in the language that I understood. And then whenever I'm more our instructors, they are entrepreneurs, they are VC, they are venture capital, they are business, and sometimes I don't understand what they're talking about. I'm like
Yeah.
you're talking about business model stuff, you're talking about finances, commercialization, and I'm like raise my hand. I'm like, can you explain that? Can you give an example of that? Can you put it in a different term? And so yeah, absolutely. The resources are out there. But the Steve Blank is, I mean, he is a really, he changed the way of the startup model and
Mm,
his learning style, or sorry, teaching style. It made so much sense to me as an academic. So that's one that anybody who's interested in
yeah.
starting up, I'm like, you have to take this course. It's free. It's amazing.
Mm,
And if I didn't have those, Yeah, if I didn't have that information, I would not feel as comfortable and successful. Like our company is doing really great. Men Micro Maps, if you've been on the web page, we're kind of secretive. We don't
Yeah.
explain what it is. And the
Mhm.
reason why is we're filing a provisional patent. And
I could
so,
see that. Okay.
yeah, people are like, what is it? And I'm like, well,
I
it's a
had some
metaphor.
ideas, and I think that's what I was trying
Yeah.
to get your kind of thoughts on video too. But yeah, and I'll definitely include that in the description and make sure people can see that website though.
Yeah,
But
and we have a demo space in spatial.io, and it's really wonderful because that spatial.io is, it's a social metaverse. So whenever I say metaverse, it has that you can build, imagination, but you need to have people. And Minecraft is the best analogy, or Fortnite. And so we do have a space. We are, again, whenever our provisional patent is released, but we do invite people. We presented it at conferences. We've done the XR and LXD meetup. And so absolutely, if people want to schedule a time, great for kids. And so you're in the throat, you're in the palatine tonsil, and you can parkour on the microbes. You play with things. There's a little red blood cell that you can drive. There's a salmonella that you can surf on. So we want to have a lot of fun
that's
gaming
really cool.
elements. But the models are, I mean, they are they're phenomenal. The microbe models.
Mhm.
I work with a XR generalists, and we are basing it on microscopy. I mean, we look at tons of microscopy images. We're, collaborating with the
Mhm.
National Institute of Health on actual real structures. And that's something that's bothered me about what has been available in the VR, in the 3D blender stuff. The
Mhm.
stuff that is available now, the microbes, they're not real. They're not representative. And I'm like, that is not salmonella. Where I want to have a fun learning experience accessible to any background. That's another thing that, no, initially I was like, I'm only making this for medical students. I'm like, no, they'll like it, they'll love it, but they're all about the test.
Mhm.
Versus, you know what? People get sick. People hear about COVID, but they don't really know what it is. Let me show you. So we have SARS-CoV-2. We have got influenza. We have got, these different models, and be like, this is actually what it looks like. These are actually what these structures are, and using that as a really public education, and having an understanding in a fun way, a really fun, unintimidating way, and say like, these are what these microbes actually look like.
Yeah, and it just seems really amazing, and I know there's a lot of these terms that it kind of go over my head, because I'm not
Y-
from a medical student,
Yeah,
but
and
maybe
and
it's like the type
and
of
that
thing for me
that's
where I could learn a lot. But
Yeah, that's actually the point. And I'm like microbiology. But people are intimidated by microbiology, and the reason is because of the nomenclature. If I shift it and say we are microscopic, you're
yeah,
tiny, and I love
yeah,
my Giardia. We have
mhm,
our AI assist is phage, and so
mhm,
it's a bacteriophage, so it's a virus that targets bacteria, and it's trained for what we call a near pure. So a tutor
mhm,
that is trained to use language that is approachable to everyone. So people are intimidated by microbiology because
mhm,
it's restricted to the ivory tower. Only the PhDs and MD can learn the subject, but we all get sick.
yeah.
I'm like, let me show you my microbe. Put a face on them
Well,
and make them talk.
and I think yeah, and I think during COVID, I think a lot more people became more aware of microbiology. I would say.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't have too much time at least with this Zoom call, but I did want to end with just any thoughts that maybe that weren't expressed, just about the transition experience. Anybody that, let's say, a med student, or maybe someone working in the med field, in academia that wants to pivot, to like startups or just outside of academia. Are there any additional thoughts? Anything that would really help them make that transition?
I did. The goals and believing in yourself. That I
Mm,
did not just take the leap, just be like, wake up one day and be like, I'm done with it.
yeah.
I was like, what I want to do. This is in 2022. I was sick. I've got arthritis. And I'm like, I can't live like this. I can't go another 20 years and working these
Mm,
12-hour days. I physically can't do it. So I, at my core, I said, I want to develop digital media and I want to teach. That's what I want to do. And I need to figure out how to do that. And I cold call, I sent out, got a lot of non-responses, but it didn't phase me because I was like, this is what I want to do. And even, fundraising is challenging, and so work with people, get skills.
Mm,
Absolutely, if you're interested, the AI XR revolution, so extended reality is kind of a
mm,
bucket term for all of the mixed reality, augmented reality. It is a
yeah.
huge tsunami that's going on. That's a new field. We're getting in early, which is really cool.
Yeah.
But just there's amazing societies out there. So I go to a weekly meetup. It's XR Women, so we meet
Mm,
in the different metaverses. There's a lot of free conferences, webinars, and I consume that information and a network in that world. And so now I did that all before I left academia. I did that
mm,
all on my weekends, on my I did that on my own so that when I did make the support, so and I say
mm,
that with connections, that if I felt up or I had a question or, now we're starting to talk about the fundraising. We're not ready. We just went to an
okay.
event. They're like, oh, are you taking investors? And we're like, "No, not yet. We're 100% owned." And because I had so much knowledge that I just actively sought out. And that's my one piece of advice is if you have that
Mm,
inkling, just the professor is out as a great resource. And from that, I've now started
mm,
making connections on LinkedIn, and I've met some really cool people.
mm,
Um, and just every interview that I have, every discussion that I have, I learn something new. Like I learned
yeah.
something new, and so that has been a really exciting because I'd only been in the medical education world for
Mm,
25 years, and once I started really actively reaching out, connecting, that just changed everything for me.
yeah. And I hope this video kind of gets more word out about med micro maps and just, more importantly your story because I think just hearing people's transition stories really matter.
Yeah,
I think they really just help people like have that inspiration
yeah,
because I think some people just think they're stuck, but I think
yeah,
when you have goals and put your mind to it, like it's possible.
yeah.
Yeah. So
I'm my husband and I are together. We're working all the time. We need to actively take breaks. But I'm so happy. I mean, I'm so
Mhm.
happy. I work the 12-hour day, but I drop my daughter off at school. I pick her up every day. I take my dogs for a
Mhm.
walk. They just heard me say the walk world,
Yeah.
and for my health, my mental health, my physical health. It's been so much better. I haven't felt this good since in 2014, because I can take care of myself, number one, and then I can do my work. And that's really that I would say is the best thing about being self-employed is having that self-care.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm gonna probably cut it short here, but thank you for your time.
Yeah,
And just I'll be sure to include all the resources in the description, so people can learn more about med microlabs. So
yeah.
yeah, I appreciate it.